morning. Today we are continuing working with our graphs and how we're displaying our data. We are doing CO64. I can interpret and create histograms. So when we look at this page, we can see that there's the bar graph and there's the histogram, and they're similar looking, but there are definitely differences to them. So we're going to learn about those differences. A histogram is a graph that displays data from a frequency table. So a histogram is used to show the frequency or how often something happens, hence the frequency table that we use to make it. The x-axis, the line on the bottom, always measures numbers instead of things like a bar graph does. So think back to the math packet that we did. We had to make a graph out of the injury types. That's what was on the bottom, the types of injuries. So instead, a histogram is going to have numbers on the bottom. So let's look at our bar graph versus our histogram. We're going to write each of the characteristics in the correct place. We're seeing the differences between the two. So we have measures quantity and measures frequency. The bar graph is the one that measures quantity. How many back injuries were there? A histogram measures frequency. That's why we have those numbers on the x-axis. It's measuring the frequency. Then we have the bars are touching, or the bars have equal space between them. When we're looking at those two examples on this page, the bar graph is the one that has space between them. So we've got measures quantity, then we have bars have equal space between them. The histogram, you will notice the bars are touching. Next, we have the x-axis values on the bottom. So the values can be reordered. It doesn't matter the order that we put our items in on the bottom. Where the other one, it has to be in a specific order. Thinking back to our injury types, doesn't matter if our first bar is the back injury, or if that first bar is falls, or the first bar is whatever I don't remember what the examples all were, but it didn't matter which order those types of injuries came in. So our x-axis values can be reordered. So it didn't matter the order we put them in. Or if we're thinking about the number of how many people like football, how many people like soccer, how many people like basketball. Doesn't matter if I put football first or if I put basketball first, or it can be reordered. Whereas a histogram, the x-axis values have to be, so the x-axis values cannot be reordered. So when we look at that bottom, we can see the numbers go in order. If we look at that bottom histogram example, we have less than 50, 50 to 100, 100 to 150, 150 to 200, 200 to 250. Those numbers have to be in order. It wouldn't make sense if we had them jumbled out of order. Our last one is bars must be the same width, or bars may or may not be the same width. So when we look at these two examples, they're all the same width across. So we can't tell just by looking at these examples, but if we think it through with that histogram, if our bars are less than 50, 50 to 100, 100 to 150, they're all the same amount of spacing that we're doing. So our bars must be the same width. Because they represent the same distance between each bar, so they must be the same width. Whereas our bar graph, the bars may or may not be the same width. So the width of the bar doesn't really tell us anything in that bar graph, so it's okay if they're not the same width. Whereas with the histogram, it's telling us that range, 50 to 100, 100 to 150. It's telling us our range is every 50, so they have to be the same width. So that is our front page. Let's look to see how we use these histograms. So let me scroll down. Oops. To our second page. We have a histogram and we need to be able to answer the questions. Now this histogram is a little complicated because the number of the people on the left going up our y-axis, they don't have clear numbers in between the 10 and the 20, the 30, the 40. So we're not sure exactly how many. So I'm going to tell you how high I put these bars going to. So then when you answer your questions, you can answer them easier. So if we look at the 40 to 50 range, because on the bottom in that, for the x-axis, it's the grade that they got on the quiz. So our bar goes from 40 to 50. So those people that scored in the 40s on their test, they could have scored 42, they could have scored 47, they could have scored 45. They're all lumped into this bar, and there were 14 of them. Going from 50 to 60 in scoring a 50, any type of 50 on the test, there was 23. From 60 to 70, there's 35. From 70 to 80, we had 44 people scoring in that range. From 80 to 90, we had 38 people scoring in that range. And from 90 to 100, we had 25 people scoring in that range. So when we look at our questions on the right, how many people scored between 40 and 50 on the test, you're going to look at this bar right here. How many people scored above 70, you're going to look at all three of these bars, because those are the people that got above 70 on their test. And that's how we answer those questions. So look at which chunks we are looking at. And you're going to be adding or subtracting or just using those numbers that we wrote up there. For our second section, it says create a histogram from the following frequency tables. Now, up here, they have an actual title on their histogram, grades on the English test. So we know that the x-axis are all the grades, and the y-axis are the number of people. Well, from the frequency table, we don't have a title to the frequency table, so we can't put a title to our table. But remember, to our graph, when we make our graphs, we know that on the left side is going to be the frequency on that y-axis. How often did it occur? What was the frequency? So that's always on the left. So on the bottom, we're going to put our heights, and that M means that the measurements are in meters. So the heights and that M would be meters. So now we have to put our numbers. So if I look at my first range, it's 1.34 to 1.39. Then my next one, 1.40 to 1.45, and so on. Then when we're going up the side, we're going all the way from 0 up to 31. Probably not going to want to count by ones. You're probably going to do some kind of skip counting. Remember when you, so you're going to number it going up. Remember that your bars need to be touching on the histogram and they should be the same width. So try your best to make them the same width. You're going to do the same thing over here for our class frequency table that they have. You're going to put a title on the bottom. You're going to put a title on the y-axis. You're going to put your numbers on the bottom, your frequency, how often it occurs going up. So you're going to complete both of those tables. And then on the bottom, for the box and whisker plot, it says the 5-number summary. So remember, the 5-number summary is the minimum, the maximum, the lower quartile, the median, and the upper quartile. So remember, the minimum and maximum are the lowest and the highest. That median is right in the middle. That lower quartile is where that median would be of the lower half. The upper quartile is where that median is of the upper half. So if you're not sure how to find those on the box and whisker, go back to that objective and recheck how to find them. For my friends at home, we hope you are well, and we hope to see you soon. Have a wonderful day.